The eating disorder anorexia is profiled in a 2-episode arc in the TV series Degrassi, The Next Generation.
Degrassi is a show about 6 teenagers, 3 boys and 3 girls, who go to a high school in Canada, and we sort of watch their trials of love and academic work and trying to balance all of the things that people encounter during puberty. So what is anorexia? Anorexia is an eating disorder where the patient purposely starves themselves in order to lose weight. And this is common in mostly adolescent and slightly older girls, which is why the TV show Degrassi is perfect to profile this eating disorder. The physical symptoms of anorexia are a thin appearance, dizziness and or fainting from lack of food, and intolerance of cold. And we see dizziness when Emma faints in school, and intolerance of cold when Manny notes how cold Emma's hands are. These are the behavioral symptoms of anorexia. First and foremost, anorexics refuse to eat. Often they exhibit excessive exercise in order to lose weight, anhedonia, which is a loss of pleasure in things they used to find pleasurable, and a preoccupation with body image. Emma, the main character in the Degrassi episode, exhibits most of these symptoms. She refuses to eat when she hides French fries in her pocket and knocks the picnic onto the ground so she doesn't have to eat the food. We see excessive exercise when her and Manny continue to run even though they're not eating enough to replace the calories they're burning. Emma exhibits anhedonia when she withdraws from Manny and stops doing other things she used to enjoy, like rainforest activism. And mostly we see preoccupation with food and body image when she cuts out pictures of thin models and keeps a food diary.
So before looking at the neurological causes of eating disorders, we should look at the superficial causes of eating disorders. The first one is a desire to be thin. We see this in both Emma and Manny. Manny wants to lose weight for an upcoming audition, and Emma wants to look thin because she thinks it's physically attractive. The second one, which is more subtle, is a need for control. Emma's parents have separated recently because her father cheated on her mother. This is a very big source of stress in Emma's life that she cannot control, and there are several quotes from the episode where she says, "I feel like I just need control." Now, before we talk about the brain and anorexia, we should know a little bit about brain diseases and disorders. Brain disorders are usually caused by imbalances of hormones, and hormones are also called neurotransmitters. The brain sends messages about everything from emotion to movement using neurotransmitters. The brain communicates via bodies called neurons. The neurotransmitters are released by the axon of one neuron and is sensed by the receptors on the synaptic cleft of another neuron, as you can see in this picture below. Now that we know a bit about brain disorders and the causes of anorexia, we can see the connections between anorexia and the reward/dopamine system in the brain. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that is very important in the feeling of reward. The observational evidence for this connection is that these symptoms of anorexia, such as anhedonia and feelings of happiness upon weight loss, are related to the general idea of reward. And the scientific evidence for this connection is that there is dopamine regulation alterations in the brains of anorexics and recovering anorexics. So let's take a look at the reward system to see if there really is a connection between eating disorders and reward and dopamine. As we can see here, in blue is the dopamine pathway, and you can see it projects right onto the ventral striata, and down in the left corner we can see the functions of dopamine, which are reward, pleasure, and compulsion, and we can see that those all play a very important role in eating disorders. So there is a connection between the reward system, the ventral striata, and dopamine. This connection plays a very important role in eating disorders.
So let's bring it back to the episode of Degrassi. How do eating disorders and the reward system relate to Emma and her problem? Well, one of the studies has a quote that says, "They seem to find little else rewarding in life aside from losing weight." And that is very evident in Emma's character, and we see that in sort of two facets of things that she does. First, the self-perpetuating nature of her anorexia, how she keeps getting more and more into it, and her collection of pictures of thin models as something to model her own body by. So we're going to discuss two studies that relate to these two issues in Emma's eating disorder.
The first study I want to talk about is called Increased Dopamine D2-D3 Receptor Binding After Recovery from Anorexia Nervosa Measured by Positron Emission Tomography and 11C raclopide. Now, a lot of those words are complicated, but basically what they're saying is when more of this molecule, 11C raclopide, binds to the reward area or the ventral striata of the brain, the more dopamine there is in the brain. So their hypothesis was that recovering anorexics would have more dopamine binding in the reward area of the brain because they have more dopamine in their reward system, and the reward system is being used more. And they did this by testing for dopamine in 11 recovering anorexics and 11 control women. Now, when looking at the PET scan, you're going to see a scan of the brain where areas with 11C raclopide binding light up. And so it's important to remember that 11C raclopide binding means dopamine. So here are the results of the study. This picture is a scan of the brain of a recovering anorexic on the left and a healthy woman on the right. Bright spots are where C11 raclopide bound to the ventral striata of the brain. We can see that more binding took place in the brain of the recovering anorexic because the colors are more intense there. So why is the increased binding significant? Well, more binding in recovering anorexic means that more dopamine is found in their reward center or their ventral striata. The higher than normal levels of dopamine mean that the reward system is being activated more. So this explains how reward is related to Emma's eating disorder, because Emma is happy when she loses weight and it's reinforced, and then she has a continued compulsion to lose weight. The second study is called A Neural Signature of Anorexia in the Ventral Striatal Reward System. Their hypothesis is that women with anorexia would show a different response to pictures of overweight, healthy, and thin women in their reward central, the ventral striata, compared to healthy women. So they tested this by scanning the brain of anorexic and healthy women while they were looking at images of the three different body types. Now here are their results. The tall blue bar shows the anorexic's response to thin women, while the short red bar shows the anorexic's response to normal women. These results show that anorexics have more activity in their reward system when they saw a picture of thin women. It is important to note that the area of the brain that lights up when these pictures are viewing is the same area of the brain that lit up in the dopamine study, the ventral striata or the reward system. So what is the significance of this in relation to the episode of Degrassi? Well, first, this study just backs up the evidence that the ventral striata is very important in eating disorders, and thus the reward system is important in eating disorders. And it also explains Emma's collection of pictures of thin models because it was more stimulating to the reward system. In conclusion, I think that the portrayal of anorexia nervosa in Degrassi, The Next Generation, is very accurate. Emma's anorexia is very self-perpetuating and closely related to the reward system, as we see when she cuts out pictures of thin women. Overall, Emma's portrayal of anorexia is quite accurate because her outward symptoms demonstrate a reward-related disease.